This is the DarshanTalks podcast. Regulatory guy, irregular podcast with host Darshan Kulkarni. You can find the show on Twitter at DarshanTalks or the show's website at DarshanTalks.com.
Welcome to the DarshanTalks podcast. I am your host, Darshan Kulkarni. As some of you may know, I'm an attorney and a pharmacist and advise companies with FDA-regulated products. So if you work in or have an interest in an FDA-regulated company or its products, this is the podcast for you. Please leave a comment or like or subscribe. We'd love to have you. So today's guest is, how should I put this? You are the VP of HR Technology and Analytics at HR Computes. You can reach him at morris@hrcomputes.com, or you can reach out to him on LinkedIn. And Morris and HR Computes are involved in optimizing and selecting new software, and they'll help you implement with speed to impact. So as Morris said a few minutes ago, we make technology work for human resources. So here's your guest, Morris Yankell. Hey, Morris, thanks for joining us.
Darshan, nice to meet you. Nice to see you again. I love your background, man. That is the perfect symmetry of two things that don't go together. You're a pharmacist, like being a pharmacist is immediately, and then you went into law. It's crazy. I love it.
I did so much more than that.
True.
If you wanted something odd and different, that's probably me. But that is your job, though, isn't it? It is taking the weird, the odd, the different, and making them work in a way that optimizes their resources, their knowledge. Because you are in healthcare, and as you know, in pharma companies, you make money through the efforts of your employees. So how do you optimize those employees is the biggest thing that you have to struggle with. So let me start by a really basic thing. I'm going to expose a bias, and this is my concern. I have personally found that if I send things to HR, that's a black box.
Boom.
Nothing's ever going to come out of it. Nothing good has ever come from sending your application to HR. My experience, my pitch has always been, send it to the people who want to hire you. HR will do the processing and the paperwork. Am I wrong, first of all?
So a couple things come to my mind, and I actually just did a talk about those applicant tracking systems and sort of hacking the applicant tracking system, because the idea, it's the idea for an applicant tracking system is get your data in there as fast as you can, get out and do your LinkedIn research and do exactly, Darshan, what you said. Find out who's the hiring manager, find out someone you know in the company or is a second connection to someone in the company, and go about it in a personal way. But usually what they're going to turn to you and say is, did you apply for the job?
Right.
In today's litigious society, applicant tracking systems were really created for affirmative action and EEO reporting. So if you're, applying to a large enough company, they want to count you along the way. But more than that, those systems have the ability to stay in touch with you, to communicate with you as the candidate, and to treat you like more than just a widget in the process.
See, I'm going to call you out on that, though.
Yeah.
Of the many times when I've applied for jobs, never once, I'd say maybe less than 1% of the time have I had, this job is closed because we've given it to someone else or whatever it is. It's usually been let me collect your data. Never tell me what you're going to do with my data. Never telling me what rights do I have with my data. GDPR and stuff give you some of these rights. But for the most part, it's let me hoard your data. And if someone comes out of it, I couldn't think of, I've worked literally till the VP level, and I can tell you that I guess higher than that technically, C-suite. The point being,
be humble, Darshan.
There you go. But my point is, the point I'm making is, I've never once had someone go, you know what, we found you in our HR system. We want to talk to you about this role we have. It's always been send in your application.
Yeah.
So what am I missing? Supposed to have happened?
You're not missing it. The human resources department or the IT department or the HR IT department, they're missing it. People buy an applicant tracking system for a lot of reasons. The main reason that the companies buy, and we implemented it, not legal advice, thank you. We implemented the system for Novartis Pharmaceutical.
Okay.
So, giant company worldwide. Their goal was to establish a global database of applicants.
Right.
Right? They have evergreen recs on scientists and on salespeople, meaning they are always recruiting for those kinds of people. So what they want is they want to pull in the most candidates they can. Now, the problem with that is that a lot of candidates feel as if they threw their resume into a black hole.
Right.
The solution is right there in front of them, and it's all about configuring the system so that when somebody sends something in, immediately they get an email. Thank you so much for your application. It's a very easy configuration item, but you've got to get people to do that, and you've got to get them to agree to the words that are going to be in that. It takes some time. It takes some conversation. And then 2 weeks in, you can send another email automatically. This is all set up ahead of time that says, we're still reviewing your resume. By the way, maybe you take a look at some of our other jobs or whatever. The beauty of this really, and so that type of campaign, email campaign, you can continue that for the length of, as long as that candidate is active. The beauty of it that companies do not understand is that they're hurting their brand by not doing that. They're making people feel like, and I've applied for positions where I said, I'm never going to buy another product from, XYZ company because they treated me like poo. I don't want to be treated that way. And I wouldn't work there now if they called me back. So
that's the fundamental thing, right? I don't feel like I got treated like poo. What I feel like is that I just got ignored, which I'm not sure that's better.
Yeah. It's frustrating, right? I mean,
frustrating.
Yeah.
And then what gets even worse is, as you said, someone will go, did you apply? At a certain point, you're going, I know that nothing's going to happen with this application, so I'm going to apply like 15 places, 20 places.
Right.
And I have no idea if I applied to your specific one.
So, the problem is that they want as many applicants as possible. That's why generally you implement. Well, why because you're looking for diamonds in the rough.
You don't need 50 of those, though, right?
You do. Well, absolutely. You want the right applicant, but anyone can apply for a job.
Right.
I can apply for a scientist job. I'm not qualified to be a scientist, but I could still put my resume in there. The key, again, is the system is set up so that it can kick you out, reject you automatically based on knockout questions. So a lot of times you see when you apply, are you over 18? Right. Will you require sponsorship? Do you drive a car? I mean, here you are, you're applying to be a bus driver. Do you have a commercial driver's license? If you answer no, you can immediately get a rejection. But again, they don't set it up all the way. The concentration is on other things. Yep.
Are those intended to be knockout questions, or are they supposed to be like legal questions you have to ask? I didn't realize they were knockout questions, to be honest.
No, I mean, so you can pick additional questions, right? If you're recruiting for a position that has 5 to 10 years experience, you ask the question, do you have 5 to 10 years experience? The person says, I have 0 to 3. Maybe you want to knock them out. But the other thing those questions can do is they can rank the candidates. They can give you a score so that now you're looking at, let's say I'm the recruiter. If I get 1,000 candidates in a week, I can't go through all of those. But if I've set it up so that it's applying a score based on the knockout questions and then based on keywords that are in the job description and that match your resume, if those keywords match, you're going to get a higher score. You're going to come to the top of my sheet, top of my screen.
Now here's the problem with that system. Mm-hmm. You talked about how I have a unique background.
Yeah.
I know for a fact that in many of my situations, I fit a niche that they may not even have realized that they have or they need.
Need. Yep.
Do you have 5 to 10 years of experience doing blah? No, I have 4 years of experience doing this and 3 years doing that, and then another 4 doing something else. But together, they're worth more like 15 years of what you actually need.
Yep.
So how do these systems land up handicapping you more than enabling you?
Well, depends how you look at it. I mean, in your case, you are a unicorn, right? I mean, how many people have, right? How many people, or today I was talking to someone and they called it a purple squirrel. Right. I think I'd rather be a unicorn than but anyway, yeah. But, in the world today, a data scientist is one of those things. Or for that matter, I worked in an organization where they had non-destructive testing technicians. totally cool title, but it's
Yeah.
kind of like, what do those people do? Well, it turns out, we talked about what do they do, and it's good work. It's they make a good amount of money, and it's a kind of a technician type of degree, but it's they're somewhat unique out there in the world. But you're right. If someone is totally, like a background that they don't even know that they need you, it's going to be hard to fit your square peg into their round hole. What we're trying to do, what I'm trying to say about applicant tracking systems is that human resources has in their hands, because most of these systems already do these things. They're just not configured to go to the next step. You've got to treat your candidates better, because that's the start of their relationship with your company. It's funny that the only time that you would probably be willing to watch an advertisement for a company is when you're a job applicant. So they could inform you about their newest product or about their culture or whatever in a 30-second vignette that pops up during your application or at the end of your application. Or for that matter, they could offer you a coupon. Looking for a job is a headache. We sell Excedrin. Here's 50 cents off. Turn HR into a profit center. So consumer products. I have not. I've recommended it, but I've never applied for a spot, and gotten some kind of coupon at the end. I would think people would use it, and you can track the barcode so that that product was sold based on the human resources group and their kind of advertising.
Here's my issue. I'm thinking as a lawyer now. I'm going, would the candidate read that as, you better buy this if you want me to take your job seriously?
Right. You put a disclaimer in there. I mean, you're giving them a chance.
But no, to me, it's a fascinating idea, right?
Yeah.
You have a captive audience who's interested in your job.
Totally.
They're possibly interested in your product.
Yep.
And you're connecting those two things.
Mm-hmm.
The risks arise in that. Like the same exact situation if you would have gone to a doctor and said, you know what, you're applying for this job, prescribe my drug. This is more about my drug.
Whoa.
Suddenly, which is the dynamic.
That's a little more than that's a little more than giving somebody 50 cents off to buy Excedrin there, Darshan. Right. But thinking like a lawyer, I'm with you there. That was very good, the way you turned that on me. But I think that, in this case, my point is just there are ways to communicate. And that's the whole idea. Like you said at the beginning, if it's HR, if it's human, it's a resource, especially in a company that makes their money based on their employees. So, treat them better, communicate with them more, and being a candidate, that's the first step along the way. Everybody hears about employee engagement, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and we're all for it. Who's going to be against that kind of stuff? But start at the point where they're a candidate, and now you've maybe pushed that person. You ask the question, I apply and then I never hear. So that communication is one thing. But the second thing is, at Novartis, they had this database of truly hundreds of thousands of candidates. And very few people searched that database to look for their next open rec. Again, it's a simple way to create something. And you're right. If somebody is slightly different, then they may not score as high on the list. But if it's an evergreen rec and they're constantly bumping people up and looking at resumes, maybe they do come across you. But I guess you're right. You're right. If you're not fitting into what their job description says, well, let me give you this one other tip.
Yeah.
There's a website called jobscan.co, jobscan.co. I make no money from them. So and actually it's free for a small number of job scans. It basically is a box on one side where you paste your resume and a box on the other where you paste the job description. And it does what most of these applicant tracking systems do. It grades those two. It does the combination and it says, oh, you get 93 points or whatever. It is doing what the applicant tracking systems do so that you can see, wait, my resume, this looks like the best job for me and it's a great company. It's 5 minutes away from where I live. I've got to get this job. So put your resume in, put the description in, let it see, and then change your resume. And now run it again. And then change your resume and now run it again. Not asking you to lie, but it's kind of like speaking their language.
Did you say jobscan.io or .co?
.co. Okay. Yeah. And there's a few others. That's just one that's kind of very popular. And yeah, it's great. It's a great idea and a great. Now, to me, the thing is that it takes time, right? And time is money. So you don't do that for every job, but you do it for jobs where you go, this is the perfect job for me. And you really want to make that good impression, but once you get your resume to that point, get it into the applicant tracking system as fast and as quickly as you can means you've got to speak that language. So computers, they're not that smart. They follow patterns. Right. And one of the things that I counsel people, again, this is no charge. It's just I help people write an applicant tracking resume, or really I just show them a format. And then when you follow that format, it parses very quickly. So yeah, you still have to answer those knockout questions. You may have to put in some other pieces because each one of these systems is slightly different. But you get your resume in there in 5 or 10 minutes. You submit. And now you're in LinkedIn for the other 40 minutes.
Okay.
Now you're doing your research. So, yeah.
Before we continue, I do want to say one more thing, which is how to actually find you, because you are a wealth of information. Morris, again, just for those of you who haven't heard me before, can be found at morris@hrcomputes.com, or you can connect with him on LinkedIn. So if you want help on how to implement a job applicant system, if you will, Morris is the guy to talk to, and he has as you can tell, a wealth of knowledge. Morris, let me ask you another question. You talked about how employees feel like widgets. How do you change the paradigm? How do you advise companies to stop treating people like widgets? What is your advice?
So, there's all kinds of culture consultants and folks who will come in from that perspective. I always look at it from the technology perspective.
Yeah.
There are tools now that will do employee surveys that will then analyze that data from a sentiment analysis perspective. Now, everybody talks about...
Morris, I want to keep that entire conversation for future time.
Okay.
From an applicant tracking system perspective, how do you address that? How do you make someone feel like they're not just a widget in the application process?
Sure. So most of, again, these applicant tracking systems set things up where there are videos you can watch, where there are, the CEO gives a little talk, you can watch that, to sort of inculcate you to the culture of the organization. Even to the point of showing you potentially who, and it depends where you are in that, process. So maybe you've already been interviewed a few times, but that portal that you can go to check your status or to put in more information, it can show you who the boss is. That boss can give you a few words of advice or tell you what it's like, or it can, depending on the job that you're applying for, it could show you videos of people who have that job in the company. Where did they come from? What did they do? What do they do on a daily basis? And then things like, and it's sort of trite, but, hey, our main headquarters, and actually maybe nowadays it's not so important, but our main headquarters is located here. And right. You know what's there? A dry cleaner and, Starbucks, and give them the flavor of what that organization has, let alone the things about our mission is positive and,
right.
Those kinds of things, or we're green and, we do sustainability things. Another one is their employee resource groups. So, give them the feeling that the person's going to be valued for the differences that they may bring to the organization. Tell them about the company. And again, those, it's really a portal, it's really a website, or it's future communication with them to tell them those kinds of things.
That's really, really good advice. So I'm going to narrow that down. So first of all, you've spoken a lot about Novartis. Obviously, we aren't, neither of us get any money from Novartis. I don't know if
we wish. We're not consulting with them right now.
Right. We're not consulting with Novartis right now, either one of us. However, what we did talk about was we started off with job hacking. We talked about this idea of getting your data in there, then using LinkedIn to reach out. We talked about the value of it and the importance of it because of EEO reporting, so EEOC reporting, if you will. And you talked about how the importance of staying in touch, as long as the company is active and as long as the individual is active, and the job is active, obviously, the idea is use your system to actually connect with them. You talk about trying to avoid that feeling of a potential employee feeling treated badly. You talked about the use of tracking systems. You talked about some really interesting angles, things like the use of coupons. But what I thought was really interesting then, you mentioned another job hacking tool, which was using something like jobscan.co. And while you help people with applicant tracking resumes, you think that JobScan can help you speak computer, if you will, and optimize your resume to get the job that the computer technology is going to look at. You then talked about some tools that people can use to get an idea of the culture, use of videos, the CEO giving a little talk to give an idea of the culture, things like there's a Starbucks nearby, things like these are the people you might be working with. You talk about employee resource groups. Is there anything I missed in this conversation?
You're right on. No, you're spot on,
Perfect.
Thank you. I mean, just Darshan, the opportunity to talk to people about HR tech is, weird, but exciting to me. I really believe I have a master's in HR and went into this business because I think human resources can do positive things. These days, it's all about the technology because that's how HR has been transformed, from being more kind of hands on the keyboard or paper pushers to hopefully being more about employee engagement, et cetera. And technology can do it. It's just that, people may not see that. And that's where we come in. And that's what I love to talk about. So willing to talk to people, would love to meet people. Thank you.
And again, for those of you who want to reach, Morris, how do they reach you again?
Morris at hrcomputes.com, or take a look at hrcomputes.com. There's a lot of good reading there that will put you right to sleep, but you can also click and, get in touch with me multiple ways from there. Yeah. Or Morris Yankell on LinkedIn. Love to talk.
There you go. And again, if you like this podcast, please leave a comment, subscribe. You can find me at DarshanTalks on Twitter or go to our website at DarshanTalks.com. Morris, this was wonderful having you. We'd love to have you back again. We already have topics lined up for the next conversation.
Awesome. I love it, Darshan. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is the Darshan Talks podcast. Regulatory guy, irregular podcast with host Darshan Kulkarni. You can find the show on Twitter at DarshanTalks or the show's website at DarshanTalks.com.